So when my case was called, Mullins versus Commissioner, I stood up and I said, Your Honor, I have some stipulations before the court, and I hope we'll be able to hear those today. And the judge shot back at me. He said, Mr. Mullins, the court is not going to have time to go into all that. He said, what I want you to do is go in with the U.S. Attorney into this conference room and you all thrash this thing out. So they weren't going to hear any of my motions because naturally they did not want a court record of a conspiracy between the FBI and the IRS to have me put in a mental institution. So I went in with this young, and the IRS, by the way, did not have any representative there. Here I was suing the Commissioner of Internal Revenue, and they sent down a U.S. attorney, not an IRS attorney at all. And so we went in the room, and this attorney started going over my tax return. And of course, I usually file a voluminous tax return because I'm engaged in a lot of different things. I have 4 international publishing companies and so forth. So he started disallowing a few things, and then he allowed some other things. And it wound up that I had no deficiency. So we went back before the judge, and he said, have you gentlemen managed to reach an agreement? And the U.S. attorney said, yes, Your Honor. And I said, yes, Your Honor. So I walked out of that courtroom with a letter from the U.S. tax court that I had no tax deficiency. And that was in 1982. I've never heard from him again to this day. But, you know, I tell friends of mine, I don't understand. Why don't they call? But because I have some other theories. I have 2 chapters in my new book, The Rape of Justice, on taxation. And I have some legal theories there which I would like to test in court. But as I say, I don't hear from them, so I have no way of getting in touch with them, really. The IRS seems to have vanished.
How do you know that the FBI has closed your file?
Oh, they haven't closed my file. They claim they have. They never closed the file. I imagine that they are still keeping pretty good track of me because, you know, I get out a book every year, and I usually manage to get a few flattering references to them in there. And in fact, in my biography of Ezra Pound, I had a couple of paragraphs about the FBI, and I found this was published in 1961. This difficult individual, Ezra Pound, which is the only authorized biography of Ezra Pound, he commissioned me to write it. And in my file, I did find that J. Edgar Hoover was extremely upset by what I had written about the FBI in that book in 1961. I think he wanted to have its circulation stopped. And it sold very few copies. Well, it was remaindered almost immediately. It was published by a New York publishing company called Fleet Publishing Company, which a few months after they published my book, they went out of business. And I'm afraid I've been a bad influence on the American economy in my career because I've put publishing companies out of business. Newspapers that have published my articles have been closed down. I've had 5 radio talk hosts who have lost their shows after I appeared on them. And I appeared on Martin Downey 2 weeks before his show was canceled. So I've got a very bad record as far as it comes to helping out people. But generally, I do about 30 radio shows a year. And I had one fellow in Denver who was canceled after I was on. He got a radio show on another station. He had me on again. He was canceled again. And Tony Hilder, who's now has a show in Alaska, he was canceled 3 different times in various California stations after I was on his show. Alan Stang of California, I was on his radio show, and he had a very good audience. I sold almost 300 copies of my Secrets of the Federal Reserve after I appeared on that show. And his show was not only canceled, but they sent him to prison for 6 months for failure to file. And so he came under a lot of pressure. But you have to expect this because they will go after anybody that they can. They will intimidate anybody they can. They operate completely outside the law. For years, the FBI did black bag jobs, and I would come into my office at my home after being out for a couple hours. All of my papers would be in disarray, and whatever I'd been working on, I'd have to dig for it for 2 hours to find it, and this happened many times. And in fact, they had a story in the Washington Post about one man who said that he had carried out over 85 black bag jobs, that is burglaries, for the FBI during his career. And these are people who are themselves outlaws. In the world order, I cite U.S. statutes on criminal syndicalism, and these people are liable under the statutes on criminal syndicalism, and I give those statutes, and they can be arrested anywhere in the United States on the basis of those statutes alone. Plus, there are many other statutes which they're in violation of. So, yes.
So at this point in time, you're choosing to pay taxes?
Pardon?
Are you a taxpayer yourself at this point?
Well, I always say I pay anything I owe. If they can prove I owe something, I'll pay it.
So you do file with the IRS?
I file, yes. I file, and if they want an audit, they can have an audit. And if they want to assess a deficiency, I'll go back into tax court, because there were a lot of things we didn't cover the last time I was there. So,
in light of all that you know, can I ask the reason that you're choosing to file rather than take a non-filing position?
Well, the problem with the non-filing position is that they come after you for what they call willful failure to file. And they can tie you up on that for quite a long time, and they have sent a lot of people to prison on it. And so I would rather send something in and let them play with it and object to it, and then we can go to court and fight about it, rather than just simply challenge them on the on who should file and so forth. Because there are plenty of people doing that. Irwin Schiff has done it, and many other people have done it, and Danny has done it, and so some of them have won, some have lost. I say in my book, The Rape of Justice, that when you go into American court, it's Russian roulette. The prosecutor spins the chamber and hands you the gun, and you put it to your head and pull the trigger. Hopefully there's no bullet in that chamber, but you never know. That's the way our legal system works. And that's something else that we have got to correct, because there's no reason for any American citizen to go into an American court and play Russian roulette. He should go in there and have his rights protected. He should get justice. There's a new book out by Gary Spence, one of the best trial lawyers in the United States, called Justice for None. In the first sentence of that book, he says, there is no justice in any American court for the people. And this is a man who knows. I've been in the courts for 40 years. I know it. But people don't find this out until they actually get into court. Because they may think there's some corruption there, they may think there's some problems, but they think that you are going to get some justice. You get no justice. Go in there ready to fight. Go in there with all of the ammunition you have, and be prepared for a real struggle. Because they're not going to give you anything but a hard time. And if you hire a lawyer, I tell people that if you go into any prison in the United States, and there's a prisoner in every cell, and every one of those prisoners had a lawyer. And of course, I always represented myself. I hired lawyers a couple times. I had to fire them because within days I found out they were double-crossing me.